Yeah, so my talk is going to be about broadcast and identifiability in MPC. And before I begin, I just want to take a quick moment to say that I was really excited when I got invited to give a talk here, because I remember attending TPMPC as a PhD student in 2018 when I was even too shy to be in the group picture, but I ended up learning a lot in the workshop. And then since then, I've been able to attend it every year. So it's a really special moment for me. Thank you for the invitation. Now let's begin talking about what we're here for. So I want to focus on MPC protocols with a bot. Say that you have these characters from Zootopia who want to compute this combined function f on their private inputs. And ideally, you would want everyone at the end of the protocol to get this output y. But if the MPC protocol you're running only guarantees you security with a bot, then it may happen that some of the parties are corrupt. So there are some spoilers for the movie here, but then say that the sheep is corrupt and she sends some malformed messages and tries to disrupt the computation. And in such a case, it may happen that only the adversary gets the output and the honest parties do not get the output. In fact, you can have different kinds of abort security. One of them is called selective abort, in which it may happen that some of the honest parties are getting the output while some others are not. So here you can imagine that the adversary is selecting a subset of the honest parties to get the output. So maybe in this case, only the rabbit was selected to get the output. A slightly better notion is that called unanimous abort, in which the honest parties are in agreement. So either all the honest parties get the output or all of them output bot. So it's slightly better in the sense that they at least have an agreement. But in both these flavors of abort, it's kind of a denial of service attack. So even if the unanimous abort seems slightly better, as far as these honest parties are concerned, they did not get anything by participating in this computation. And this might serve as a deterrent for them, and they may not want to participate in the future because they got nothing out of participating once. Now, therefore, there is this stronger notion, which is called identifiable abort, in which it's still the same in the sense that it may happen that honest people don't get the output, but in case they don't get the output, at least they identify one corrupt person. So this is like progress in some way, because at least you identified somebody to be bad. Maybe you could consider removing that person from the next computation and rerunning. So it's still some kind of progress, and you might want to participate in such a computation. So this is the notion called identifiable abort. And let me just elaborate on that again. So basically, identifiable abort protocols guarantee to you that either all the honest parties would get the output or they all would identify at least one corrupt cheater. And this was actually introduced by Orman and Lindell in 2007. And since then, there have been many works. I have missed a lot of citations, only put a few of them, but there have been many works which achieve identifiable abort. Some of them focus on efficiency, some of them focus on feasibility in terms of round complexity, but this is a very popular notion to strive for. So far I've only been talking about identifiability, but I kind of had two keywords in my title, which was broadcast and identifiability. So what is the connection between them? Is there any connection between them? So the connection was actually established by Cohen and Lindell in 2014, and they in fact showed that broadcast is necessary for identifiable abort. So it's not just two independent phrases that I used in my title, but they are in fact connected. Now, before I go over why this is the case, let me just clarify what I mean by broadcast. So in the broadcast setting, basically, there is a designated party who is the dealer, and he wants to send a message. Now, if you only have point-to-point channels, then it may happen that the dealer is sending different messages to different people. Now, suppose you want to sort of enforce that the dealer should send the same message to everyone. So you can imagine that we just want the effect of a microphone. Like I'm talking right now, and all of you are hopefully listening to the same thing. And this is the effect that we want. And a broadcast protocol does exactly this. It ensures that everyone receives consistent information. And slightly more formally, there are two properties that a broadcast functionality satisfies. The first is validity, which says that if this dealer is honest, then all the honest people will output that particular message that was input by the dealer. And the second is consistency, which says that even if the dealer is corrupt, still all the honest people will basically get the same information or consistent information. So these are the two properties of broadcast. So now let's go back to why this is, okay, so these are actually some classic papers related to broadcast, which I will talk a little bit more about. So now let's go over the argument about why do we need broadcast to get identifiable abort. And this is the argument by Cohen and Lindell. And for this, you actually need to know two facts about broadcast. The first is that if I only have point-to-point channels and I'm trying to realize the broadcast functionality by means of a protocol over these point-to-point channels, then this result of Lamport and others in 82 said that this is not possible without a setup unless you have like 2/3 of honest majority. So you can tolerate only 1/3 corrupt parties. That's one fact. The second one is that, but if you in fact have a setup like a public key infrastructure, then Dolev-Strong in 83 showed that then you could realize broadcast by means of a protocol over point-to-point channel, and you could do it for arbitrary number of corruptions. So these are two facts that we will use in this particular argument to see why broadcast is necessary for identifiable abort. So now the proof is by contradiction. So first of all, assume that you're in a setting where broadcast is not realizable over point-to-point channel. So assume that you have no setup and you have more than 1/3 corruption. And say by contradiction, you managed to design an MPC protocol Pi that achieves IA and it uses only point-to-point channel. So now the idea is that we will use this protocol Pi to construct this other protocol Pi prime. And what we do in Pi prime is that we just run an instance of Pi, and what we are making this protocol Pi compute is nothing but the functionality for the PKI. So basically, I'm trying to get a setup by running the MPC with identifiable abort, and the output of this functionality would be a vector of public keys, and every person gets their own secret key. So I run an instance of Pi to compute this specific PKI functionality, but since I'm running an identifiable abort protocol, there is a chance that this protocol could abort. Say that it aborts, but still, since we had identifiability, the honest people would have identified at least one cheater. So now what they could do is they could remove this cheater, and then they could just rerun. They could just run another instance of Pi without this corrupt party. And at some point, it will succeed, because every time you're removing one cheater, in the worst case, you do this T times, and you have removed all the cheaters. And at that point, you will succeed. And it's safe to rerun here, because until now, there are no private inputs being involved. And the other outcome could be that it is a success. That means you did end up successfully establishing a PKI. And once you have a PKI, then now you can simply use any protocol like that of Dolev-Strong, which knows how to realize broadcast once you have a PKI. And it can do it for arbitrary number of corruptions. So by doing this, what we have essentially done is that Pi prime has managed to realize broadcast over point-to-point channel, even in a setting where broadcast was not realizable. So this is the contradiction, that such a Pi prime would contradict that you cannot get broadcast without a setup and more than 1/3 corruption. So this is basically the argument about why broadcast is necessary. Okay, broadcast is necessary and identifiability seems nice. Let's just use it, which, yes, we do use it, but there's a slight catch that it is expensive in general to realize. Now, that you can think about realizing it in different ways. So one way could be that you could use an external resource like a blockchain, but that would still be an expensive way to do it. Or the other way would be like what I have been talking about, use one of these protocols over point-to-point channel and then realize the broadcast. But that's still expensive in terms of the number of rounds it takes, also in terms of communication. So it would be nice to avoid broadcast, but then Cohen and Lindell just told us that we need broadcast for identifiability. So what shall we do? So we could potentially do two different things. One is that we settle for some weaker form of identifiability, which maybe we can get just with point-to-point channels, and that we think is good enough for our application. That could be one option. And the other option is that if you just want to stick to the regular IA, you don't want to settle for something weaker, then you try to find out that you have to use broadcast, you know that, but maybe you try to use it minimally in as few rounds as possible and maybe communicating as little as possible through the broadcast. So these are kind of the two approaches that you could do in order to get around this. So in the rest of my talk, I'm mostly going to focus on the first approach, on maybe settling for weaker notions that are good enough. But I will also just spend maybe the last few minutes talking about the other approach. So here's the plan for the remaining, that I will introduce to you a new notion, which I'm referring to it as provable selective identifiable abort. So it's like a weaker identifiability that you can realize just using point-to-point channel. And I'll present, for that, we actually introduce a weaker broadcast, which has this sort of identifiability. And we give a 2-round construction for that. And we also show that for this kind of weaker broadcast, you would need an honest majority. So I'll elaborate on all of this. And lastly, I'll show you how you could use such a weaker broadcast in applications and specifically for ECDSA algorithms. And in the second part, I just want to tell you the state of the art of what is known about the optimality of broadcast in round optimal protocols that achieve identifiable abort, and just touch upon one of the lower bounds in the plain model. Okay, so let's begin with this. What do we mean by weak identifiability, which still seems reasonable? So in this work with Ivan, Sofia, and Luisa, we actually introduced this notion of selective IA. So this is similar to selective abort in the sense that it may happen that some of the honest parties are getting the output, some others are not. That may still happen, but if an honest party does not get the output, then they locally learn the identity of at least one corrupt party. So the guarantee is that either an honest party learns the output or learns the identity of at least one corrupt cheater. And if there are more than one corrupt parties, then it can also happen that they learn the identity of different cheaters. For example, it may happen that the rabbit here understood that the fox is corrupt, but the other honest party identified the sheep to be corrupt. So that's also something that can happen. And we did show that this can be realized just using point-to-point channels, so you don't need broadcast. And then in this more recent work with Yash, we enhanced this notion to some sort of provable selective identifiability, in which if I'm an honest party who did not get the output and identified somebody locally to be corrupt, I also now can prove to you that that party was corrupt. Okay? So I kind of also get a proof of cheating certificate against that corrupt party. So here, the rabbit here did not only detect the fox to be corrupt, but if anybody asks her, she can also prove why and convince any external party that the fox is corrupt. And now some of you might be thinking that, hold on, if you have a proof that can convince anyone, then why that should be the same as identifiable abort? Why just not forward this proof? Yes, you could convert this into identifiable abort, but then for that you will need to broadcast this proof. Because for identifiable abort, you need everyone to agree on the cheater. So if everyone should identify the fox to be corrupt, then the rabbit has to broadcast this proof, and then we are back again that we don't want to use broadcast. So the hope is that you get this sort of local proof of cheating certificate that if anybody asks you later, you can prove to them, or in a higher level protocol. So these are the notions that I wanted to talk about. And we want to see if we can realize the provable selective one without broadcast. But to understand that, first let's understand how broadcast would help in identifiability in general, and see if we can just remove the broadcast to get this weaker form. So very broadly speaking, a corrupt party can misbehave in two ways. The first way is that the corrupt party is sending a malformed message, sending something different than what they're supposed to. And the second form is that it could just be that the corrupt party does not send something. So say that in a particular round, the sheep was supposed to send something to the lion, and she did not. And this is blocking the lion from doing a subsequent computation. So that is also a kind of misbehavior. So the way that broadcast helps for both the settings is that for the first one, to mitigate that, what you could do is you could have like a zero-knowledge proof or something that makes you prove that you have sent the message correctly, computed the message correctly, and you could broadcast this proof so everyone can check it. And for the next one, that to show that you have sent something, what you could do is that you could, even if the sheep has to send something privately to the lion, what she can do is still broadcast a ciphertext using the public key of the lion, and then everyone can see that there is some ciphertext, and they don't know the content of it, but at least they can verify that something has been sent. Okay? So just by routing the communication through broadcast, you are able to mitigate this kind of problem. And now we want to avoid broadcast. So what would we do? And we are okay with just selectively identifying with the proof. So what could we do in the first case? So we could, of course, maybe send the proof privately, but make the sheep make the sheep sign on it, so that now the lion could locally have a proof that, look, I have a signature from the sheep, and it's on a malformed message. So now I locally have a proof of cheating against the sheep, because the signature is proving that this is something that was sent to me by the sheep and showing to be corrupt. But this one is more problematic because over here, how can the lion prove that you got nothing over a point-to-point channel? Like, this is the most difficult thing to prove, that I got nothing. And even if the lion is trying to tell the other honest party, the corrupt party can always say that the other one is lying. So this seems to be the most difficult thing to detect and probably convince to other people. And this is kind of ironic because this is the best strategy that the adversary can do, and it's the simplest to carry out. The adversary does not have to come up with a lot of clever strategies or anything to see what is the maximum damage that they can do. They simply don't have to say anything, and that would cause the kind of maximum damage in some sense. And I mean, I try to take a survey. It seems not many people know this song, but then it really fits well that there's this romantic song by Ronan Keating saying that you say it best when you say nothing at all. And it's true that the adversary has the best strategy not to just say anything. They don't have to do anything clever. So this is the more challenging aspect to resolve. So now the way we try to resolve it is by replacing the broadcasts with a broadcast with weak identifiability. So this is the notion that I told you about, the provable selective identifiability, in which you can locally detect somebody to be corrupt, and you can also prove to an external person. Now, an analogous notion for broadcast could be, the one that we chose, is that, again, of course, you have a dealer, and then here it may happen that some of the honest people, at the end of the protocol, they have a signed message from the dealer, and some others are able to get a proof of cheating against the dealer. So it's slightly more specific in the sense that if you get a proof of cheating, it's always against the dealer, but then it sort of serves our purpose. So let me just repeat it. So this is a new notion of broadcast with IA, in which the guarantee is that each honest party would either end up with a signed message from the dealer or get a proof of cheating certificate against the dealer. Okay? Yeah. So in the paper, we actually give like both the ideal functionality, but I think the property-based definition might be more intuitive. So let me just go over what properties this new notion would satisfy. So the validity is almost the same as the regular broadcast, which is that you want that if the dealer is honest, then you want everyone to have the same message, the input of the dealer. But here you do insist that it's a signed message from the dealer. And the termination is that at the end of the protocol, what I have been saying is that either the honest parties would output a signed message from the dealer or a proof of cheating against the dealer. And in fact, like in our work, we tried to also capture different kinds of misbehavior or different kinds of proofs of cheating. So there could be like a strong proof of cheating, which is basically trying to capture that the dealer actively misbehaved. So this would correspond to like really being malicious in the sense that you're trying to malform the message, and yeah. And then there could be a weaker proof of cheating, which is basically like a proof of non-responsiveness, maybe that you did not send something when you were supposed to, or you were offline when you were supposed to send something. And the reason for trying to demarcate these different kinds of cheating is just something that you might want in your application level, because maybe you want to penalize some kind of misbehavior more than the other. So if there is a chance that it can happen that the honest party gets offline, then maybe you don't want to penalize it that harshly. So that's something that we leave it to the higher level, but we just demarcate it that you could possibly have different kinds of cheats and certificates and try to have some separation. Okay. And the next one is consistency, which says that if you have a pair of honest people who are outputting non-certificates, then they should be consistent in the sense that they output the same signed value. And the last one is that, of course, we don't want an honest dealer to be implicated. So that's the defamation freeness, which says that the adversary cannot come up with the proof of cheating certificate that implicates an honest deal. So these are the 4 properties that our BCIA protocol would satisfy, and this is the new notion. So I just want to clarify some differences because it's a new notion. It's so similar to broadcast, so I just want to make a few points. The first one is that in the regular broadcast, you are kind of allowed to output a default value. So if the dealer is offline, sends nothing, many of the existing protocols just result in the parties understanding that, okay, they got nothing, they just all output the default value, and they're still all in agreement. But in contrast, in our BCIA protocol, we don't allow this. We insist that if you terminate with a non-certificate, then you should have a signed message from the dealer. And the reason for this is that when you're composing it in an outer protocol or a bigger protocol, there you want to say a kind of proof statement saying that this was sent to me via broadcast in the underlying protocol. So it may not be enough to just say that, oh, the underlying protocol did not work, so it's a default value. So because of some technicalities, this kind of notion is more helpful to get a signed message from the dealer. And this is actually crucial because it makes a difference in the feasibility of these 2 notions. So if I think about the feasibility with PKI, then like I mentioned, the Dolev-Strong results gives you a way to get broadcast even for arbitrary number of corruptions. But in our work, we show that if you want this BCIA, then you need an honest majority. Honest majority is necessary for this. And then the last one is about round complexity, that in the broadcast protocol, it's known that if you want to tolerate T corruptions, then you need at least T+1 rounds. But then we are able to, given a PKI and assuming honest majority, you can get this weaker notion of BCIA in just 2 rounds. So if you think that this is a good enough identifiability for your application, then it might make sense to replace those broadcasts with this weaker broadcast. Okay, so now I'll finally move on to the 2-round BCIA construction, and I'm assuming an honest majority, and we also see why it's necessary, but now just assume so. And I'll show you the case for 5 parties with 2 corruptions, but you can generalize this. Okay, so this is how the construction looks like. It's in fact very simple. Assume that you have a PKI setup. Now, in the first round, what we do is we just make the dealer sign on the message and send it to everyone. That's it. So the first round is just the dealer sending the message to everyone, but signing on. And in the second round, parties just echo to each other whatever they got in the first round. But then you may not have got anything, or maybe you got something with an invalid signature. So what you do is that if you got a valid signed message, then you echo that. Otherwise, you just yourself sign on a message saying bot, and then you send this. So it's basically just a way for honest people to tell the others that, oh, like I got nothing, and sign on this message. So this is actually the end of the 2 rounds. But then the way that we compute the output is that the first thing we do is first check for any potential certificates of cheating. So the first check that you make is you see if there are 2 different messages, both with valid signatures. And then if you find that, then that would be like a strong proof of cheating, because it shows that the dealer has sent 2 different things when, in fact, it was supposed to send like a unique message. And if this does not pass, then the next thing you look for is you see if there are T+1 people saying that they got nothing. So if you have T+1 signed messages saying bot, then that would be a weak proof of cheating or a proof of non-responsiveness, because it kind of shows that at least one honest person is saying they got nothing from the dealer and the dealer was offline. And once you check for these certificates, if you get neither of them, then you just output the signed message that you have. Okay? So this is basically how this two-round protocol looks like, and this actually achieves all the properties that I talked about. But let's go over why that is true. Okay, so let's maybe first start with the honest dealer case. So the dealer is honest. There are two other corrupt people. The first one is validity, which says that if the dealer had input M, then everyone should output the same signed message M. Now, it's true that the honest parties will echo to each other this signed message because they would have got it from the dealer. And for sure, they will not be able to get the strong certificate because the honest dealer would have signed only on a unique message. So there is no way that they are able to find two contradictory messages with valid signatures unless the adversary broke unforgeability. And also, the adversary cannot come up with a weak certificate because in the worst case, he can come up with T people signing on bot because those would correspond to the T corrupt people, and that is not enough to constitute the weak certificate. So definitely the honest people will not be able to get any of those things, and they will finally output the signed message, so validity would hold. Next, let's look at defamation freeness, but I kind of already explained it because if it's an honest dealer, then the adversary will have to break unforgeability if they want to come up with a strong certificate, and they cannot come up with a weak certificate because they can get at the most T messages saying bot corresponding to T corrupt people. So that's also okay, the honest dealer is protected. Now let's look at the corrupt dealer case. Over here, the corrupt dealer, so we want termination. So the corrupt dealer actually has kind of two options. One option is that he sends nothing, like no valid signed message to any honest party in the first round. That's an option. But if he goes for that option, then definitely the N minus T, that is the T plus 1 honest people, would sign on a message saying bot, and this would result in the weak certificate. So in that way, the adversary will definitely be caught if he just sends no valid message to anyone in the first round. And if he sends contradictory messages, both with valid signatures, to a pair of honest people, then they will echo it to each other in the second round, and then they will get the strong proof of certificate. So then that's why in all the cases, it will happen that either you get the certificate or there is, in fact, only one unique message that the corrupt dealer has sent, and then there is no harm in outputting that. And basically, consistency is also maintained by the fact that you are echoing or making the honest people share with each other what they saw. So this is basically the two-round construction of the BCIA protocol with PKI. And now I want to show you why this is impossible with dishonest majority. So the proof is by contradiction that suppose you had a BCIA protocol that you could get even with a dishonest majority. Say that you could get it running among these 5 parties even when up to 3 of them were corrupt. So now say that they have a protocol and they are able to achieve this. But now consider an execution E1 of this protocol in which, so the dealer is P0, the one in the center. And in this execution, say that the dealer is corrupt and also P3 and P4 are corrupt. So you have 3 corruptions and it's a dishonest majority. Now what their strategy is the simplest strategy that I was talking about is that they send no messages to the honest parties. Throughout the protocol, they just don't talk to the honest parties. So then the effect of this is just basically that the communication channels are totally cut off from this set of 3 people to the set of 2 people. That's the effect that's happening. Now, as an honest party, if I received nothing throughout the protocol, but I want to, this is a protocol with this BCIA. So I should either output a signed message from the dealer or I should output a certificate. But I will not be able to output a signed message from the dealer because I basically heard nothing throughout the protocol. And if I could do that, that would contradict unforgeability. So definitely it cannot be the case that this execution would result in outputting a signed message from the dealer. So it has to be the other option in which the honest parties are outputting a certificate of cheating against the corrupt peanut. Now say that it's this case, then now let's look at another execution, E2, where the set of corrupt parties are sort of a complement of what we had before, because now the dealer is honest and P1 and P2 are the corrupt people. And now what the adversary in E2 does is that he simply ignores all the messages from honest people. So basically, they're trying to get the same effect of cutting off the communication channels from the set of 3 parties to the set of 2 parties. So these 2 scenarios are sort of identical in that way because the effect is the same. And now if the honest party P1 here managed to get a certificate of cheating against P0, then even the corrupt P1 here would manage to get the same kind of certificate against P0. But then we cannot afford that because P0 here is actually honest. So we cannot afford that they are able to come up with a proof that is implicating the honest P0 in E2. And this is sort of the argument about why honest majority is necessary for this notion of broadcast with IA. And I just want to say quickly 2 points about this. One is that it holds irrespective of the number of rounds, but it does not contradict anything that is known about broadcast because, again, because of the difference that broadcast allows outputting default values. And here, remember that in the first case, we insisted that it should have outputted a signed message. So that would break down if you were allowing for default values, which is why it does not contradict the existing T+1 round protocols of broadcast in the set. Okay, so this is what I wanted to say about the protocol and the necessity of honest majority. But I also, before I finish this part, I want to mention a few related work. So there have been other works that have tried to look at weaker notions of broadcast. So the protocol that we designed is actually heavily built on this echo broadcast protocol of Goldwasser and Lindell. And they actually achieve selective abort. So they don't have the signatures or like generating those certificates because they don't aim for identifiability. But basically, we are just adding a few things to their notion. And there is also the detectable broadcast protocol by Fitzy and others. And you can think of them as a broadcast with unanimous abort in which the parties can agree that the protocol aborted. But again, there is no notion that it aborted because of the dealer or they don't agree on the identity of a corrupt person. So that's the difference, that we are trying to have a broadcast in which you are able to identify the dealer to be bad and also provably. Now, maybe some of you are getting reminded of the notion, and rightly so, of the notion of the MPC with identifiable abort with this enhanced notion of public verifiability or auditability. That's also kind of similar in spirit because you have an auditor who can later check the transcript and see if the protocol was correct and identify somebody. So there are these lines of work as well. But they are stronger than identifiable abort. So they also assume broadcast. And our point is basically that we want to get something that you can show to an external person, but then you need not rely on broadcast in the beginning. Okay, so this is about the BCIA primitive. And to demonstrate how it can be applied, we did specifically looked at it in the context of ECDSA protocols. So in this, what we did is that there is this DKLS paper, which was mainly for the dishonest majority setting, and they have an efficient protocol for that. But then that is for security with abort. So we use the honest majority variant that they sketch. We use that as our baseline ECDSA protocol, and we want to upgrade it to get this sort of provable selective identifiability. So roughly speaking, in that honest majority variant, there is like a round of broadcast on top of these building blocks of verifiable secret sharing and distributed key generation. So what we do is that we try to upgrade it to this notion of provable selective identifiability. So for this, it's not just sufficient to route all the broadcast communication in the original protocol through this BCIA layer that we have. That's not just sufficient because that just proves that you sent something, but it does not prove that you sent the correct thing. So we have to do like some other set of techniques in order to prove the message consistency across all these blocks. And we also upgrade these individual building blocks to the identifiable variant. And yeah, that's the result from this paper. And I didn't know how visible this is, but then basically if we are trying to compare with the one that only has abort security. So there is a slight overhead in that, but then it makes sense that you maybe use this protocol only if you are in a scenario or application where aborts are likely. So then in the optimistic case, the other protocol would definitely be better. But in the pessimistic case, it makes sense that you use something like this. And as far as we know, there is only one ECDSA with identifiability, which was the work by Kennedy and others. But then we were able to get better efficiency over that. Okay. So what I talked about was mainly the first part. And let me just check on time. So maybe the last 5 to 10 minutes, I want to talk about the other approach. So now we settled for a weaker identifiability, but if we want to stick to the regular standard identifiable abort, then what can we do? So we can try to understand how many broadcasts are necessary. We are sure that one broadcast would at least be necessary by the result we saw right in the beginning. But then we just have to see whether we can just stick to that or we need more. So this is about identifiable abort protocols with minimal broadcast. And this has actually been studied for round optimal protocols in particular. So the motivation is that most of these round optimal protocols that achieve identifiable abort, they use broadcast in all the rounds. Okay? And now what we're trying to see is if any of those rounds can be replaced with point-to-point channels, but while preserving the same round optimality. So we don't want to blow up the number of rounds, and this is a line of work related to broadcast optimal MPC. So this was actually initiated by Cohen and others, who showed that if you have a CRS and dishonest majority, they showed that you, in fact, need both rounds to be over broadcast to get identifiable abort. So you cannot change any of them to point-to-point channel if you want identifiability and round optimality. And then in this work with my collaborators from Ormush, we showed that if you have a PKI and honest majority, then you can replace the first round of broadcast with point-to-point channel, but you still cannot replace the second one. The second one still needs to be over broadcast. And then we had a follow-up in which we showed that if you just have a CRS, but now you have 2/3 of honest majority, then again you can replace the first round with peer-to-peer, with point-to-point, but the second round still needs to be over broadcast. And then along with an extended set of collaborators from University of Edinburgh, we showed that in the plain model, actually 4 rounds are optimal. Like also Michele mentioned in this talk in the morning, that 4 rounds are actually optimal for MPC in the plain model. And the existing protocols were using broadcast in all the 4 rounds. And we show in this work that actually we don't need to use broadcast in all the 4 rounds. We cannot replace any of those rounds with point-to-point channel. And just to give you a vibe about how you can prove these kind of things, that how about broadcast being necessary in a particular round, I will just touch upon one of the lower bounds in this last few minutes. So now this is the argument about why, if you have a 4-round protocol in the plain model, why do you need to use broadcast in round 4, which is the last round? So the proof is by contradiction, that suppose you manage to get an IA protocol that does not use broadcast in the last round, then the high-level idea is that you can use such a protocol pi to construct a 3-round oblivious transfer protocol in the plain model. And that would be a contradiction because this is known to be impossible with black box simulation, shown by the results of HP16 and Chaudhary and others. So that would be the high-level sketch, that you start with this 4-round protocol pi and transform it into a 3-round OT protocol, and then you have arrived at the contradiction. So because you're transforming to an OT protocol, you're choosing the function accordingly. So now let's look at the 3-party protocol where the first party has input as the pair of messages, the second party has the choice bit, the third party has no input, and the output is that the last 2 parties, P2 and P3, get this message MB. So suppose your 4-round protocol pi looks like this, where the first 3 rounds are over broadcast, and the last round is over point-to-point channel. So it's actually still a 4-round protocol. It's just that I'm demarcating the point-to-point of the last one with 2 different arrows. So this is how the 4-round protocol pi would look like. Now say that you have an execution in which P1 is corrupt. And the strategy of P1 is that she simply drops this last round point-to-point message to P3. Now, as far as P3 is concerned, everything was fine until round 3, and only in the very last round, he identified locally that P1 is corrupt because P1 did not send something that they were supposed to. But then as far as the P3 is concerned, he's not sure about the situation of P2 because he does not know if P2 also identified the sheep to be corrupt or not because he does not know what happened over the point-to-point channel between P1 and P2 in the last round. But for identifiable abort, in fact, this works also for unanimous abort, you need to be in agreement with the other honest party. So that means that P3 will have to compute the output, even though he's missing this last round message from P1, because just to be safe, because he does not know if P2 already output. So the claim here is that the combined view of P2 and P3 at the end of round 3 itself should be sufficient to compute this output MB. And why is that true? It's true because look at what P3 is getting in the last round. He's only getting a point-to-point message from P2 in round 4, which should be a function of P2's view at the end of round 3 itself. So if you take their combined view at the end of round 3, that should be sufficient to compute MB. And that's what you use to construct this OT protocol. So this OT protocol is basically that you have the sender PS with the input as a pair of messages and the receiver PR with choice bit B. And what we make the sender do is simply to emulate the role of P1 in Pi. And what we make the receiver do is to emulate the roles of P2 and P3 in Pi. And basically, you just run the first 3 rounds of Pi here. So whenever what PS sends is nothing but what P1 was sending in Pi to P2 and P3. And what PR sends is what P2 and P3 was sending to P1 in Pi. So those are the same 3 rounds. And the idea here is that because of this claim, we know that PR will get the output MB at the end of the 3rd round itself because we just argued that the combined view of P2 and P3, which will now be the view of this receiver PR, is enough to compute MB at the end of the 3rd round itself. So this is why this is like a 3-round OT construction. Now, why is this secure? Roughly because PS being corrupt here is as good as P1 being corrupt there, and you assume that that one is secure. And PR being corrupt here is analogous to P2 and P3 being corrupt there. And we assume that that is also secure in dishonest majority. So it tolerates 2 out of 3 corruptions. So that's how you can sort of argue that this is a secure 3-round OT protocol in the plain model, which contradicts something that's already known. Okay, so to summarize, broadcast is necessary for identifiable abort, but it's expensive. So if you're okay with settling for a weaker identifiable notion, that is some sort of provable selective identifiability, then you might want to consider you replacing your broadcasts with this weaker broadcast, but maybe good enough, which can be realized just with 2 rounds using a PKI, but you will need to use an honest majority for this. And the other option is that you still stick to IA and try to look at how less you can broadcast and how many less number of times you can use it. I think that's it. Thank you for listening.